Hal Jordan has quite the reputation in DC Comics. He's considered by some to be the greatest Green Lantern. He's simultaneously the source of many a meme. However, regardless of how one feels about the character, his importance cannot be understated, and his introduction is one of the crowning achievements for DC in the Silver Age. It's an introduction that stands strong to this day. It's still foundational for much of contemporary Green Lantern lore, and beyond it. Things that spin off from it. Looking at you, absolute Green Lantern. So let's take a trip back to the Silver Age. You know I'm always ready. We'll take a look at what worked, what stuck, and what will be memed forever. I'm Sash, this is Casually Comics. Let's talk about just why would Hal Jordan do this? Now, when it comes to the Silver Age of comics, many comic historians will cite the arrival of Barry Allen's Flash in Showcase number 4 in 1956, marking that as the clear start, although some will argue for the first appearance of the Martian Manhunter. But that is a debate for another day. What is not argued about is that Green Lantern, who debuted in Showcase number 22 in 1959, is an example of the cementation of some of the hallmarks of this new comic age. The golden age of comics ended with the rise of the Comics Code. The Comics Code Authority came to prominence in 1954, as the comic industry sought to regulate itself and avoid government regulation. Although even before that, superhero popularity had been on the decline. It was that decline that left space for some of the other genres to really rise up, like horror and crime, and to a lesser extent in the comic space sci-fi, although sci-fi was having a big boom over in pulp magazines. However, the Comics Code and its restrictions, which we discussed in the video, we even read it, that cut off a lot of those aforementioned genres at the knees, particularly horror and crime. Those were specifically targeted, because there were some that used these hearings and the rise of the code to really get rid of some competition. There's also a whole bunch of mafia things, there's a moral panic, it's a very interesting time. Now, because of all this, different comic companies had to respond, and some cases changed what they were publishing or how the stories that they were publishing were presented. For DC Comics, at the time National Comics, they responded in a manner that would eventually become a staple, and that was a massive overhaul, but not entirely, only in certain areas. It started off with the reintroduction of the Flash, but a new version of the Flash, a reworking of the concept. But while the Flash got a new person under the mask, Barry Allen, rather than Jay Garrick, his origin wasn't too different. Both got their powers via lab accident, they both got super speed and went out and solved crimes. But what changed for Barry was the type of criminals he was fighting and what they were doing. They were much more supervillains, a bit more tech-based. It steered more clear of the gangsters that had been the norm of the Golden Age. However, when Hal Jordan was introduced in 1959 in Showcase 22, it really leaned into the sci-fi element, even more so than the Flash. It removed magic entirely from the origin, and it fused together a couple of the elements of the expandingly popular sci-fi genre. You did have gadgets, but you also had space exploration, and also just a curiosity and attempt to infuse science into more elements of the story. That was then paired with some more classic superhero tropes, and it created something that really landed. When it comes to those classic tropes, it's things like having a secret identity and the like. A lot of how this came together came down to the creative forces at play. Many of the dominant forces in the Silver Age had come up in the Gold. This was the case for much of the staff on Showcase 22. The editor, Julius Schwartz, was heavily involved in creating this version of Green Lantern alongside the author, John Broome. Julius Schwartz, who would go on to become one of the legendary DC editors, was also a literary agent who represented a lot of iconic sci-fi authors. Some real heavy hitters like Alfred Bester, also shout out to Babylon 5 for using that name, and having it reference his work, The Demolished Man. He also represented Ray Bradbury, H.P. Lovecraft, Stanley Roman Weinbaum, and more. He was also the person who organized the first World Science Fiction Convention, this in 1939. So he was definitely a fan of the genre, and he took this Green Lantern reworking as an opportunity to steer the book in that direction. And Broome had come up reading science fiction and started off writing science fiction for pulp magazines, so the match worked. Gil Kane was on art and would become one of the legendary Green Lantern artists. His Hal is iconic, and inker Joe Giello rounds out the creative team for this first appearance. Green Lantern's first outing is very intentional. Everything about it comes across as very deliberate. There's a clear attempt to create something that's going to stick, and a lot of the key elements did. This first issue paints a very firm picture as to who the Green Lantern is, what it is, why it is, not so much the how. The how is going to come later. This Green Lantern does come across as very fully formed and very distinct from Alan Scott. Alan Scott's origin is given in his first appearance in All-American Comics number 16 in 1940, but the formatting and pacing of comics has changed over the decades, and as a result, Alan's origin can come across as a bit stilted to some. So cliff notes, because we're here. Let's just give you what happened with Alan so you can compare and contrast. He's an engineer on a train that crashes, and he survives. And he finds a weird lantern, a weird Green Lantern. It addresses him as the Green Flame, name and gives its history, that it was formed from a meteor that came to Earth that was found by a Chinese occultist named Chang 2,000 years ago. He then forged the lantern, and there was a prophecy that it would light 3 times. This is the 3rd time. So while there's a bit of a space element, there's a heavy mystic element that's going to the fore. It's taking point. Alan then takes on this green flame to become the Green Lantern, and he also needs to find out who sabotaged the train, because that's what you do when you find a magic lamp. That and you ask for more wishes. Now, showcase number 22 features 3 Green Lantern stories, starting off with SOS Green Lantern. That's the origin. And right away, it's a bit different. Not only do we get a whole teaser page, but there's a different type of buildup. We start on the introduction of all of these science fiction elements. Specifically, there's going to be aliens in space. The intro starts off by showing Abin Sur in his downed spacecraft. He's dying and he knows he has to pass on his power battery. Even if he's on Earth, it's still something he needs to do. So right away, it starts to set off the idea that this Green Lantern, it's something that transcends species. It's bigger than just one person, even though we're only going to see one person. As the stricken spaceman presses his finger ring to the object beside him, battery of power, seek in this strange world. If there be a deserving one here, seek and find, bring him to me. From the green ring, a bolt of pure energy rises. He must be one without fear, entirely without fear. Hurry, the time is short. It's not as short as he says it is. He's going to have a lot to say. Also, note the emphasis on Hal's fearlessness, not on willpower. They will mention that he controls the ring through willpower later on, but that's not the focus as of yet. What's really being set up is the idea that he is a man without fear, which has manifested differently over the years. Sometimes it's more of the force, sometimes it's more back, sometimes it's bravery, sometimes it's recklessness. Sometimes it's straight up psychosis. The Absolute Green Lantern book so far is really having a good time calling back to the fact that this was the first thing the ring was seeking out. Not a man of great will, but a man bereft of fear. The ring finds Hal. Meanwhile, at the Ferris Aircraft Company, Hal Jordan, test pilot, sits in a trainer of his own design. I feel like the of his own design part has really been lost over the years. The engineering portion of Hal, we're just going to quickly toss that to the side, too close to Alan. Hal's ship is taken to the dying Abin Sur, and he is indeed without fear. Come in. Hal Jordan. Good gosh, a spaceman communicating with me by telepathy. Now, importantly, Hal's first instinct is to help. It's significant because it instantly marks him as heroic and also a man of action. But Abin Sur can't because he's dying dramatically, and that means he only has time for one thing. Relevant exposition. Tell his wife he died. Telling Hal how the power battery worked and that he couldn't affect anything yellow. It is our duty when disaster strikes to pass on the battery of power to another who is fearless and honest. Come closer to me. I'm going to assume that ellipses was because he's dying and not because that's less important. Abin Sur does deem him honest and so gives him the ring and also even more details about what happened. Apparently the deadly radiation bands around Earth. My ship was battered in the deadly radiation bands surrounding your planet. So he gives Hal a crash course, how to use the ring. Don't try it on anything yellow because there's a necessary impurity built into the battery, which almost sounds like a cheeky way for the creative team to acknowledge that he needs a weakness, because otherwise, the way they depict this ring, he's practically a god. Now take my ring. Let me put it on you. With this ring, you will drain power from the battery, effective for 24 hours. Now, I've told you all, do not fail me. Later, when we add stuff to this, we'll find that he did not indeed tell him all. I like that he put the ring on him. It's almost as good as in the movie First Flight when they give Hal a magical girl transformation sequence. So Hal takes the uniform because Abin Sur told him to. He's not just looting his corpse. And he vows to take the ring to fight injustice. And he names himself the Green Lantern because it's nice and easy. Work smarter, not harder. And so the first story ends. It's all origin, all setup. It works in this format because this showcase has the 3 stories as mentioned, so the next 2 can then build outward from that one. And as far as the origin, it's a strong one. We have the intrigue of this alien ring. We meet Hal. We learn who he is, why he was chosen, see some of his traits. We learn how things work. The only thing it's lacking is that it doesn't really showcase the ring in action too much. You only get a couple of panels at the end, but that's taken care of when you get the next stories. Because we instantly follow it up with the secret of the flaming spear. We never learn what the secret is. This story importantly introduces Carol Ferris, Hal and the Green Lantern's love interest. At the start, Carol's just working at the company and she's receptive to Hal's advances, but that's gonna change. Now, the Flaming Spear is one of Ferris Air's planes and it's crashing. This looks like a job for Green Lantern. He also has a vested interest because he works there. This issue also introduces the Oath. He says it while he charges the lantern. Now, Abin Sur didn't tell him any oath in the last story, but it's something that can be inferred and it's a rather little thing. Plus, it's a cool oath and has remained the same to time of recording. It has this prayer-like quality to it, which helps it stick in the mind. It's also likely part of what helped the Green Lantern stand out. And this adding on of a detail, it's something that's going to happen a lot in Green Lantern lore. We're going to see a lot of flashbacks to Abin Sur. He apparently spent a long time dying. I can entirely believe he managed to find some time to slip in the oath. At the last moment, the power-packed green beam seizes the plunging craft. Gripping it, all I have to do is use my willpower and the beam does the rest. This plane has been sabotaged by a beam of radiation. In the Silver Age, radiation could do anything. By continuing exactly in this direction, all radiation travels in a straight line, and if I hold my course this way, I ought to come to its point of origin. In a house not far off. I can't understand it. Our radiation sender brought the plane down, but it didn't crash. The next instant, a startling apparition appears. Just as I figured. Saboteurs.
What is that? It ain't a bird.
It ain't a plane. It sure ain't Superman. That's a cute nod to Superman's catchphrase, which by that point would have been common knowledge. Started off on the radio and ballooned out from there. Now, while Hal can phase through walls, as long as they aren't yellow, and also stop bullets, he's no match for a yellow lamp. Yes, those panels of Hal getting knocked out by a yellow lamp, they're from his first appearance. Klutzy hot mess Hal is true Hal. We lamped him out. I love that. And they just leave him there. Maybe just to stew in his own embarrassment. Like, we could kill him, but wouldn't it be better if he woke up and realized he'd been knocked out by a lamp? When the Green Lantern comes to his senses, a yellow lamp. I should have known. My beam has no power over anything yellow. But where are those saboteurs? Well, they're escaping in a yellow car. Hal can do nothing against this yellow car. I love this issue so much. Well, thankfully he realizes that the tires are black. He can still do something. While he does get them and send them to the FBI, we never learn why they were sabotaging the plane. What was the secret of the flaming spear? What's deemed more important is what's going on with Carol. She's getting promoted.
Hal, when Carol here was born, I was downhearted. I was hoping for a son to take over the business, but as things have turned out, Carol has proven herself to be as good as any son. She's got a real fine business head on her shoulders, so I've come to a decision. I've always wanted to travel around the world before I get too old to enjoy myself. Mrs. Ferris and I will be gone 2 years, and during that time, Carol will be in sole charge of this company. Oh boy, I've got a hunch this isn't going to turn out so good for me.
Hal's not concerned about his job or anything like that. He's worried about dates. And it turns out he was right to be worried because now Carol says no. She rejects his advances. She wants to be professional, at least in this issue she does. And the following, it varies. But most of the time now we're going to set up that this is the reason she's not going to want to go out with Hal. Because she's his boss and also she wants to do a good job running the company and not be distracted. To which Hal says, he understands and respect. No, he says challenge accepted. The last story, Menace of the Runaway Missile, features him aggressively harassing her. There is a funny joke at the start before that where the people are talking about how fearless he is. But then you see his thought balloon and he's trying to work up this courage to ask her on a date. She insists now that her father is away and she's my boss that relations between us can only be official. But I've got to make her change her mind. I've got to find a way to get this past HR. Slipping into the bosses. I don't like those quotes around that. She is the boss. The boss's citadel, her private office. Hi, honey. Mr. Jordan, do you have an appointment here at this time? That hand placement was aggressive and it's about to get worse. No, but I've got a grievance. You want to keep your employees happy, don't you? That depends. The phrasing, the barricade arms. Everything. And then, as he had her trapped, he leaned in and whispered, Carol, can you co-sign my lease? Now, this story is the start of setting up a love triangle between Hal, Carol, and Green Lantern. There's a bit of an interesting element in this issue at least, and it varies from issue to issue, but in this, it's that he's not too bothered by it because it means that he still gets to see Carol either way. And also that he's kind of getting one over on her. He likes it better when that's the angle and less that he's competing with himself. But he will compete with himself. So Green Lantern is invited to the celebrities' ball. Well, in that case, Carol has a date with me tonight, whether she realizes it or not. Well, at this ball, he makes his move as Green Lantern. Carol's gonna do stuff with him whether she knows it or not. Oh gosh. On the terrace, overlooking the fragrant night, I never thought I could go for any man but Hal Jordan. But now I'm not so sure. He's drawing me closer. Going to kiss me. I guess he'll just leave that mask on if any. Well, he never gets that far because he sees a missile that's plummeting towards Coast City. And based on how it looks, he thinks it's a nuclear warhead. So he takes off because that's important. Priorities. You can't make out if the city explodes. Now this missile is yellow, because of course it is. These stories will find ways to make things that aren't normally yellow, just to have him have weaknesses. So he has to get a bit creative and stops it with a net. It turns out this was an ordinary missile, but the factory that it's targeting is a bit less ordinary. It's researching hydrogen power. This is an investigation for Green Lantern, I guess. So he tracks the missile and finds where it launched from. Inside the hidden structure moments later, Green Lantern, I've been half expecting you. But why though? And that's why I prepared this telescopic battering ram. Your vaunted power ring won't be able to stop this. His ring turned the battering ram into a stream of water, dousing me with it. Water, his one weakness, back when Hal's ring could transmute matter, unless it was yellow. Now, unlike the last story, we do learn why this guy was doing this. He wanted to be the first person to harness H-power, so that's great, we stopped that, but there's still problems for Green Lantern. They're about to set up part of Carol and Hal's relationship that would last for decades, and still sometimes rears up, though not as much. I don't want to listen to your excuses, Green Lantern. You can just leave.
But Carol, Miss Ferris, what have I done?
What have you done? You healed? Last night you kissed me. You're not objecting to that. The way you kissed me, I could tell. It's the way you kissed me that I'm referring to. If you had lost yourself in that kiss, the way I did, your eyes would have naturally closed. But Carol, be reasonable. If my eyes had been closed, I wouldn't have seen that missile in. Good day, Mr. Green Lantern. I am busy.
There is some real menace in Hal's face when he's telling her not to object that he kissed her because he could tell she wanted it.
It's real dark, but then it pivots really quickly to Carol just needing all the attention to be on her at all times. Her getting a good kiss above Coast City not exploding. How dare he try to save others?
They're such a disaster and a mess. Perfectly matched. They deserve each other.
And those 3 stories were the Green Lantern's first outing. Altogether, it paints a very solid picture, and a lot that was started here was maintained. And many of the things that weren't are at least referenced or form the building blocks to be pushed against. Like Carol and Hal aren't presented exactly the same way, but some of that, I want to find another word than mess, but it's the best word to describe their relationship, has remained. The origin remains fairly untouched. It's just added to. The oath has remained. The costume has evolved, but the bones were here. The concept of the ring using willpower is introduced. The ring's powers will be refined over time. At this point, it can really do anything. And the yellow weakness can come across as a bit cheesy as a result because of how they have to work it in sometimes. One can see how it became something that people made fun of. The sci-fi space element is there, as is the more earthbound elements. The fact that Hal is going to do both is quickly established, but there's also this seed that this could be something bigger because of how the origin starts. His endgame love interest is set up, and everything is there to just grow outwards. And it's those additions that really help the series grow over time. It just ends up making the whole affair feel grand and cosmic, which is already hinted at in the origin. The popularity and successes of works like The Flash and Green Lantern would help steer the direction of DC's Silver Age, which is a bit different from Marvel's Renaissance, once Atlas becomes Marvel in 1961. Because there's a different history and scrutiny on both companies when it comes to the code and their evolution, the different things that they do and focus. So you get unique, medium-shifting works from both. But as for Hal Jordan, he did indeed change things. He's definitely earned his place as a core DC character. He may not be everyone's favorite Green Lantern, but one could argue he is the reason we have others to choose from. Personally, I need more klutzy Hal. Ace, test pilot, and control Hal is fine, but tripping over himself, getting knocked over by lamps, can't get his life together Hal? That's the true Hal. That's the Hal Jordan I know. What do you think of this Silver Age outing for Hal? Do you think that this is what helped Green Lantern as a concept survive? What do you think of Hal? Who's your favorite Lantern? Your thoughts? I want to hear them. Please leave them down below. While you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking this time to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.